friends, yesterday we finished our book and it talked a little bit about the legend of the Lakota people, right? And it talked about White Buffalo Woman, and we talked a little bit about what a legend is. And today we are going to read another Native American legend, and this is called the legend of the Lady's Slipper. And I want to remind you guys that a legend is a made-up story, and a lot of times legends are meant to teach us something. So different cultures, different groups of people will pass down these legends for years and years, not just for the sake of telling fun old stories, but because they are meant to teach us something, okay? So I'm going to read our back blurb and give you a little bit of a sneak peek about what we might learn from this legend. It says, each lady's slipper is a gentle reminder of the beauty and courage that lives in each of us, and the many different ways that we live on in the hearts of those we love. Are we talking about like real slippers that we wear like on PJ Day in our classroom?
No.
What kind of slippers are we talking about? PJ?
Like the glass slippers from the Disney princess.
From Cinderella?
Yeah,
Not quite. Ronnie?
Like a shoe, kind of.
Not quite. Maybe we could use the illustrations on the back of the book to help us. Hassan?
Flowers.
The flowers. These flowers right here are called pink lady slippers. Okay. So I'll read this one more time. It says, each lady slipper is a gentle reminder of the beauty and courage that lives in each of us and the many different ways that we live on in the hearts of those we love. It says, the legend of the lady's slipper is a suspenseful tale of a young maiden's run through the forest in an attempt to save the people of her village. The pink and white flowers of the lady's slipper that carpet the ground each spring are a tribute to her sacrifice. This is written by Kathy Jo Worgan and illustrated by Gijsper van Frankenhuizen. He is a renowned illustrator of several legends, including the legend of the Sleeping Bear. Maybe thumbs up if you've heard of the Sleeping Bear Dunes. The legend of Mackinac Island. Thumbs up if you've heard of him, of that island. The legend of the Loon. He studied at the Royal Academy of Arts in Holland, Michigan. Just kidding. In the country of Holland. And immigrated to the United States in 1976. Okay? So let's read the legend of the Lady Slipper. About the legend of the Lady Slipper. A legend is a piece of folklore, which means it is a story that belongs to everyone. Each time a story such as this is retold by a different storyteller, it becomes a unique version of folklore belonging to that individual person. I heard the legend of the Lady Slipper, which is sometimes called the moccasin flower, many times as a young girl growing up in northern Minnesota. I recall the first time I heard it. I was 8 or 9 years old, about your age, and sitting beside a glowing campfire at the edge of a small northern lake. The forest nearby was filled with lady slippers, and I knew that they were delicate and beautiful creations. Each flower seemed to be handmade by Mother Nature herself. Although this story has several variations, it is believed that the Ojibwe people of the northern Great Lakes region were the first to tell it. I hope you enjoy my telling of the legend and my retelling it someday in your own words. But most of all, I hope this story makes you smile. Long ago, in a lush forest of green and gold, there was a small village. In the center of the village was one large fire with heavy kettles hanging above it, and nearby were several houses made of wood and bark. It was a village of peace, and its people lived a beautiful and simple way of life. Every night, the children of this village would gather around the fire and warm their faces by the light of the dancing flames. They would listen to their elders tell magical stories about Amik the beaver, Waboos the rabbit, and Makwa the bear. As the storytellers spoke, they waved their hands, weaving visions and dreams into tales. At the circle, there was one young maiden who always listened more carefully than the rest. Her name was Running Flower, and she was as swift as the ancient white deer and more beautiful than the full night sun.
You know the what's it called? You know in Utopia they say like the flowers they thought they were the wolves, but they're actually the flowers. It's like that.
The flower called the night owls.
Running Flower lived with her father, Chief Spinning Feather, and her mother, Woman of Morning Light. Running Flower admired her mother greatly because she taught her to believe that a brilliant spring always follows the hardest of winters. She taught her to honor the frozen ground because beneath the heavy snow, Mother Earth is preparing to grow and live once more. And this made Running Flower smile. What time of year do you think it is for them?
Rain.
Running Flower had great respect for her father because he was tall and straight and strong. Sometimes Chief Spinning Feather wore a wide leather band around his head with 2 eagle feathers dangling from it. She liked how they would spin in the wind when he walked through the forest, and how they would bounce upon his face when he joined in the round dancing at night. Sometimes his face wore a small, steady smile that made her feel very proud. Running Flower had deep respect for her land and the spirit of her people. She knew she belonged to the woodlands, and in some way they belonged to her. And this, too, made her smile. Running Flower shared this love of the forest with everyone in the village. In the spring, during the time of the flower moon, she would gather forget-me-nots and daisies and place them neatly into the braids of the young girls. In summer, when it was the raspberry moon, she would guide the oldest women deep in the forest and help them pick sweet red berries to remind them of their youth. And during the moon of the falling leaves, Running Flower would gather acorns and teach the youngest boys how to spin them like little brown tops. And this made her smile.
Whoa.
What do you think it means back here on this page? It says, Running Flower had deep respect for her land and the spirit of her people. She knew she belonged to the woodlands, and in some ways they belonged to her. What do you think that means? She belonged to the woodlands, and in some ways they belonged to her. Ronnie, what do you think that means?
Like that means she's like a woodland, and like everyone else is like a woodland, or she likes to keep them safe or something.
Yeah, she likes to. What does it mean to keep something safe? What's another word for that?
Like protect.
Yeah, she kind of has like a duty to protect the woods, right? She lives there, it's her home. What else do you think that means? What do you think the woods give back to her? If she's protecting them, what does the land give back to her?
Stuff to teach people.
Yeah. What is she plucking right here out of the flower, or out of the ground? Flowers. And then it says, during the moon of the falling leaves, when do the leaves fall?
Fall.
In the fall. It says Running Flower would gather acorns and teach the youngest boys how to spin them like little brown tops. Yeah.
Did she say leaves?
When the leaves fall.
In the deepest part of winter, when only frozen spirits could journey through the land with ease, everyone in the village wore snowshoes to travel through the woods. But not Running Flower. She would dash through the forest wearing nothing on her feet but moccasins. Many times, when only the pale winter moon stood watch, Running Flower would fly upon the paths of the snow-laden woods. She was so swift and light-footed that starlight seemed to fall at her heels, and this made her smile the most beautiful smile. I like how the author didn't just say, oh, she ran through the woods in the wintertime, right? Listen to the words that she used. We're collecting some special words. She said, she would fly upon the paths of the snow-laden woods. She was so swift. Swift means like what? Fast, yeah. She was so swift and light-footed that her starlight seemed to fall at her heels. One winter, during the time of the frozen spirit moon, the sky brought forth more snow than the people had ever seen. The air was brittle and clear, and a glaze of crystals covered the village. Running Flower noticed that the elders of her village were growing sick. They were coughing and moaning. They were tired and sore. The sickness grew worse every day, and soon there were no storytellers sitting by the fire at night. During the day, no young braves went to hunt, and there were no kettles hanging over the fire. The smallest children stayed in the lodges where their mothers kept them warm beneath the robes of deer and bearskin.
What's that big thing on the page? On the other side.
On this side? This is like one of their homes. It's kind of like a different version of like a teepee, kind of. Yeah, kind of like an igloo not made of ice. Do you need to sit in your seat? Even the medicine man was too ill to help. At night, a few young men beat the drum in a loud, impatient way, warning others of their pain. One evening, Running Flower went to her father, and she stepped into her lodge. She noticed that her mother lay ill by the fire. Her face was warm and moist. Running Flower was very worried. And then she saw that even her father, the great chief Spinning Feather, was strong no more. His eagle feathers were lying on the ground, and his eyes looked old and sad. I'm going to take comments after a couple pages, okay? Running Flower stepped out of the lodge and put the flat on her hand to her lips and lifted it generously to the sky. All at once she knew what she must do. She knew she had to race to the village on the other side of the forest to find medicine for her people. In the quiet of the night, she donned her white robe and wrapped in tightly around her body. She took her father's eagle feathers from the floor and held them tightly in her hand and fled into the forest. Running Flower ran swift like the deer, pressing upon the crest of her moon-showered snow. In the distance, she heard the drums of her village pounding through the air. As the wild rhythm raced through her body, she ran along the frozen trails, following the light of the polar star. Wow. You think the author could have just said, like, she put on her robe and ran through the woods?
No.
She could have. Would she have been telling the same story? You mean, would she have been giving her the same actions?
No.
Yeah, that's what she's doing, right? But that wouldn't have been a very good story to read, right? Like, it just would have been like okay, right? But instead, she used words like pounding through the air as the rhythm raced through her body, following the light of the polar star. Running Flower flew with such great speed that her heart began to pulse like a mad, rushing river. She made her way through the thickest areas of forest as the cold night wind raced against her. As she ran, frozen pine needles poked at her face and ice-laden branches lashed at her back. All the way she held her father's feathers tightly in her hand, and they made her strong. And this made her smile, a very brave smile.
She could have just got her going to the next village to get medicine. She could have just stayed at home watching her family get sick.
Yeah.
And since she decided to just try to save her village.
What word did the author use here? What kind of smile did she smile? A very what?
Right.
A very brave smile. Yeah.
I think her mother might be dying.
You think? Sounds like something not good is happening, right? Finally, in the time between night and morning, Running Flower reached the distant village. Oh my goodness, how long did she run? In the time between night and morning.
That was long.
How long did she run for, do you think? Mila.
Maybe like starting like late at night and going like to the early morning.
Yeah, so she like ran probably like how many hours, Christian?
She probably ran like 8 or 9 or 7.
Yeah, sounds like she ran for like hours and hours and hours, right?
For 24 hours.
I don't know.
That's a day.
Running Flower reached the distant village. She raised her hand and held her father's feathers tightly to the face of their chief. He knew then why she came, so he gave her a special pouch from the medicine man. It was small and round and made from the fur of the fox. There were tails and beads upon it, and it made a beautiful noise as Running Flower slipped back into the forest and raced towards home. She didn't even pause to wait. She has endurance, right? Perseverance.
She didn't. All she had to do was just like. I love how she said, like all she had to do was just like hold up the feathers, and he immediately knew. Not like, oh, my village is sick, and I need like this medicine.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think the feathers gave him like?
Maybe
clue.
it's like a sign of like sickness or something, or like my chief, like my chief has now gave up.
Yeah, good, Ronnie, yeah. As she ran upon the trail, the soft morning light cast shadows of blue and gray around her, and her body grew feverish. Her face became hot and damp as she struggled against the snow. Running Flower grew too tired and sore to notice the wind and the cold. She no longer felt the sting of the pine needles or the ice upon her feet. Many times she stumbled, and many times she stopped to rest beneath the shelter of the cedar and spruce trees. But Running Flower still smiled. Why is she smiling? Why is she still smiling, Chris?
Because she's still brave.
Why else do you think she's still smiling? Mila?
Because she's glad that she never gave up, and she's glad that she has the medicine.
As she neared her village, she heard the beat of the drums once again. The sound made her head pound and her body ache even more, but the brave little girl kept running. She ran until her mind felt as if it were filled with clouds. She ran until her body felt heavy and slow. She ran until she could run no more. Running Flower let out a terrible wail and fell to the ground. Two young braves in the village heard her cries and stepped into the forest to find her. When they did, they saw Running Flower lying in the snow, medicine pouch in one hand and the feathers of the great chief in the other. The braves carried her cold body into the village and laid her on the bed of the moss. The drums stopped beating and the air was quiet. Everyone came out to see Running Flower as she lay by the fire with her eyes closed and her mouth still and straight.
Using your bear yet?
What?
He's hanging. He's like, don't let me fall.
The great chief Spinning Feather walked wearily to his daughter. He took the medicine pouch from her hand and carefully passed it to his people. Then he lovingly stroked her long black hair and looked up towards the sky. Woman of Morning Light pressed her cheek to Running Flower's heart and kissed the frozen tears from her face. And then as the chief looked upon her form, he noticed the 2 eagle feathers still clutched in her hand. With tears in his eyes, he whispered to her that she was very brave and that springtime would come soon. But Running Flower did not smile. In desperation to save her, the women of the village began to take great pieces of fur and wrap Running Flower's frozen feet. They sew brilliant pink beads and quills upon them to honor the young hero and friend that they loved so much. I'm going to take thoughts at the end, okay, friends? As the women were busy stitching and sewing, Running Flower took one long last breath, and the feathers dropped quietly from her hand. Chief Spinning Feather began to weep openly, and the woman of Morning Light collapsed to the ground. The women, the braves, and the children began to cry. The sound of their sorrows was filling the harsh winter air when in a great flash, the sun burst forth into a glorious show of light. It was so large and warm it melted months of snow. New buds appeared on the trees, and birds began to sing. As everyone watched, the beautiful wrappings upon her feet of Running Flower turned into slippers made of magnificent blossoms, and the forest path that Running Flower ran upon became a thick carpet of the most marvelous pink and white flowers anyone had ever seen before. Everyone watched in amazement as these flowers blossomed behind the soul of Running Flower as she made her way through the forest one last time. This made everyone smile. Today her footsteps remain in the green and gold forests of the north, far beneath the light of the polar star. Each lady slipper is a gentle reminder of the beauty and courage that lives in each of us, in many different ways that we live on in the hearts of those that we love. And somewhere in that forest, Running Flower will smile forever. So where do they get the pink and white from in the flowers? Why are they sometimes called
Lady slipper.
Moccasin flower? Why are they sometimes called moccasin flowers? Anybody know? What did it say happened? Look at this page. What are they sewing on her feet? Those beautiful pink moccasins, right? And then it said as she took one last breath, the sun came out. And anywhere that she had ran became these beautiful flowers, right? Just like the moccasins on her feet, those pink and white flowers. Christian.
How?
Probably from being sick. She probably got the sickness that her village got.
Well, I thought she was too cold.
Maybe. She might have been too cold too. She might have.
She was really brave, and the only time that she didn't smile was when she was kind of fading away.
Mm-hmm.
And how did her village get the sickness?
I don't know. Remember, this is a story that, is it true?
No.
No, it's a story that others use, that their people used to talk about bravery and courage, because everywhere that they would see these flowers, they would remember that each one of us has the ability to be brave and have courage just like she did, right? So it teaches us a lesson by giving us a story to remember.
I think she ran for 12 hours, and also I know why she died. She was getting too cold, because if you're out in the cold for too long, you can get sick and sometimes pass out. I don't think she died. I think she just passed out for a while.
Well, it says, it said that They watched as amazement as these flowers blossomed behind the soul of Running Flower as she made her way through the forest one last time. So the one last time lets us know that she probably passed away. Yeah. Other thoughts about our story? So next time that you are in a forest, or next time you're even at the gardening store, or anytime you see these beautiful pink and white flowers, you can remember what? What could you remember every time you see these flowers? Riley, what do you think? I could remember what? I could remember it was in the book, but more than that, what could I remember about the book? What is it? What was this legend teaching us?
Be brave.
Yeah, to have courage. Maybe that's how we show that we love our family and our friends, is by like doing acts of service for them, right? Doing kind things, going above and beyond for those that we love and we care about. Yeah? Last thoughts?
You can remember, if you see those flowers, you
Mm-hmm.
can remember the book. We could probably buy it.
Yeah, I want you guys to remember the book, but I really more so want you to remember what the book was teaching us, right?
Courage.
Yeah, courage. Okay. I'll take last thoughts later, okay? If you have something extra, you can write it down for me. Virtual friends, thank you guys for joining us for this read aloud. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you tomorrow.